Yeah, you good? Yep. Cool. Hi, I'm Liz.
And I'm Marie, and this is Mock It, a podcast sponsored by MetroStar, where we take a deep dive look into UX design, trending design topics, and chat with our friends in the field. Let's get started.
Awesome. So today kicks off our season 2 of Mock It, which is really exciting. And to celebrate that, we are doing from a dorm room startup to successful digital solutions company with the CEO and co-founder of MetroStar. Ali, do you want to take a second to introduce yourself?
Yeah, no. Thank you, ladies. Ali Manouchehri, CEO, co-founder of MetroStar. Excited to be here on Mock It.
Yeah, we are super excited to have you here, and 23 years of MetroStar.
I know, it's crazy. It went by pretty fast.
So you
Just like kids growing
Just
up.
like kids growing up.
Yeah.
We were just talking about that.
It really is.
It's like your other baby.
Yeah.
First baby.
Yeah.
So MetroStar is a digital solutions company, and in the DC metro area, and we also have strong ties in Bloomington, Indiana.
Yeah.
So MetroStar also happens to be the sponsor of this podcast. So thank you for letting us do this and run with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then as you join us today, as I mentioned, this marks the 23rd anniversary of MetroStar. How does that feel?
It's wild. Can't believe it. Like we were just talking about it. Like it goes by really fast. I mean, when you self-reflect, you're like, at what phases and stages do you self-reflect? And it's just exciting because we keep on growing. We keep on adding amazing talent to the organization. And that's kind of like the fuel, right? The fuel for the passion of continuously growing. So pretty exciting.
Awesome. And do you want to take a second to introduce yourself more than the company or
I mean, Ali, and been here for 23 years, right? Like, kind of got a boring background. Haven't done anything else other than MetroStar. Well, a couple other things I've dabbled in. But, today I kind of focus more on the strategy of the organization, assembling different teams that are charting the course in terms of our mission identity and who we want to be in the next few years as an organization. Graduating all these different phases. It's, again, I'll go back to kids, right? It's like you have courtship and you give birth to a baby. And then there's the level of, childhood and adolescence and then to adulthood. And we're reaching that adulthood, right? Can't live in the basement anymore at the parents' house, right? We got to get out. And now it's kind of like rethinking of how we're going to compete in this market, what we're going to bring into this market. So I spend more of my time at that level. I still like to roll up my sleeves and kind of get involved in whether it's design or technology or not too much coding. I've never been a coder, but I do have an eye for design and how I think the future of human-centered design and AI, if they have a baby, what the baby should look like. So
that's really cool.
Yeah. No, I'm so into all the AI stuff that the company's been doing. It's really cool and fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's pretty exciting.
So then I know we'll probably dive in a little bit more to the AI because I think the three of us are going to nerd out about that in a moment. But before we dive in too deep, do you have an elevator speech that you want to share with us for MetroStar?
Yeah, I mean, look, MetroStar is a solution provider that focuses on digital design, DevSecOps, and artificial intelligence. There's a lot of in-between things that we do, from cybersecurity being, kind of imprinted in everything we do. But really, if you think about this kind of ugly Venn diagram I'm showing you here, it's like you got the solution piece, right, that we're building, because that's a key differentiator for MetroStar. And then the digital services that we're bringing in, like the amazing design work the two of you do, right? And how do you now mix that with artificial intelligence, with automating development and operations? And, that's really where MetroStar falls, and that's our sweet spot, is looking at different projects and problems across the spectrum of the government and saying, how can we really bring a solution that can help accelerate their mission, not just provide 30 FTEs, to just put butts in a seat.
That's awesome. And then since we are celebrating our 23rd anniversary, one of the things that when we first started, everyone was like, you always hear, you started this company in a dorm room.
Yeah.
So do you want to walk us through that, how that worked out?
Yeah, the idea was in the dorm room, that we wanted to do something together, right? We had one systems engineer. We had international studies, and I was like the philosophy major, right? And I was always a nerd around technology. I'd loved technology as a kid growing up, more hardware than anything else, because I was just fascinated with what that interface is presenting from like video games, right? And like what's powering that. So I used to take things apart all the time. And then from there, we went into my apartment where we like designed MetroStar's logo for the first time, came up with the name. Yeah. And then from there, it was a basement where we bought like our first server and like, what do we do with this server? This is during the .com. And our idea eventually became this search engine that was going to go kill Zagat. Zagat was this like brown book that would come out that would tell you where all the top restaurants were, right? Okay. And Metro Search was going to be like the Yelp open tables of the day in 1998. Cool idea, but just really bad timing, right? Smartphone wasn't there. Internet was still really expensive. Access to the internet was still like dial-up. So the speed of all that just took some time. And then there's this big mega storm that's coming of an external force called the .com bubble. So when that kind of happened, we had raised a little bit of friends and family money. And so this whole idea of Metro Search went into survival mode of saying, well, we don't want to go work for these other big companies out in the market. We want to kind of continue fueling this passion we had. We were younger, right? No kids, so you could take more risk. And Metro Search became kind of MetroStar. And then we started doing more consulting services. And the .com kind of time overlapped with the Y2K, and everyone's freaking out. The whole world's gonna stop.
Yeah, the computers are all gonna explode.
And because we were so good at building these web forms and review sites, menus, because that's what we ultimately had to do, is teach an industry why the .com was going to change the food and entertainment industry. Right? So we're building all these forms and designing how people should give feedback. And we're talking like 1999 now, right? So that allowed us to kind of get into more web projects. And it was all about design for us. Like, how do you design these forms for all these other companies around the Beltway asking for it? And you realize, like, who are these companies? Like government contractors? Like, who are these government contracting firms? And next thing you know, you're a subcontractor, and we kind of fell into it. So that's from the dorm room to that. It was, kind of an idea that we kept on kind of, giving it water, enough sunlight, and eventually it kind of started giving us some fruits.
Oh, that's a sweet. I love the gardening. I love to garden. So
yeah, that's your analogy. Or something.
Sometimes you have to sing to it, talk to it, right? So,
no, go for it.
I was gonna say, what's the one thing you wish you had known back then that you know today, or like one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Focus more, right? I'm sometimes like a balloon, and sometimes you have to complement that balloon with a string and a weight so it doesn't get out of control. And for me, it's like, I was ambitious and I want to do everything, right? And I think giving a little bit more discipline on focus would have probably helped us speed some of the things that took us a little longer to do.
So there's a lot of cool projects happening at MetroStar. What is one that happened in the past or current that the company is working on that you are just really into?
I think the one project that got us to really appreciate design was this gaming project that we had won. I mean, we're not a kind of a game publisher or a game builder, but what it allowed us to do was to assemble a really unique team. And that kind of opened up everybody's kind of eyes in terms of how do you assemble teams. Like if you put a bunch of engineers in this room, you could pretty much know what type of solution is going to come out, right? But you put Liz and Marie with a bunch of engineers, you're bound to see something different happen. And for this project, it was like we hired a game designer, right? We had front-end developers, we had visual designers, we had researchers. We actually had a researcher with an anthropology background where they looked at more human evolution and how humans are evolving, right? I mean, you think about our thumb, right? Like there was like research done on exactly, what the average thumb needs to be for a smartphone.
Yeah,
right?
and that space on your screen.
And the space on the screen and all that. Yeah. So what we had to do is now design something where predominantly it was going to be an English-based educational application that had a global audience of different cultures, different languages. And you had to go more in depth into, when I say rigorous, empathetic design, of the cultural aspects of, hey, can this dog actually go into this room if you're actually designing a game for a predominantly Muslim region of the world? Because, usually pets are not kind of too aligned culturally in terms of, religious habits and stuff like that. So that really changed the game for us. And that was pretty much like, maybe we were at that point 6-7 years old as a company. That really changed. Like, oh my God, can you imagine, like, if we won this project, we're able to assemble teams like this? It's something amazing can happen with it, right? So it never allowed us to ever think about assembling a team with just one specific skill set, right? Even though the government's very specific about the requirements they have and the type of skill sets they want. It's kind of like the challenge these days with like a project manager versus we're like, well, you really need a product manager. Well, it's the same thing. No, it's not, right? And I think we were able to kind of break some of those barriers early on to kind of build this identity about MetroStar. And we were trusted with so many .govs, .mils to kind of really help reshape, not just from a visual kind of interface layer, presentation layer, but all the way from the back end that allows you to actually have a visual kind of design and interaction that the back end could speak with that.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's funny that you brought up about the video game, because on the radio show I was listening in, they were talking about how like kids are like buying all this stuff off of the Kindles and stuff, but how you were talking about finding that language that can be universal, although, right, we're all different and different cultural things, that coins is what's used in games because, like, every currency has some form of coin. And I was like, these video gamer developers, they're smart. They're like, how to use coins. Absolutely. And even, like, kids, right, start out with coins for, like, the 25-cent gumball. Yeah, so that's, like, just, like, connected my morning today.
No, I mean, that's... They know how to get to you at a cognitive level. Yeah, right? It really is.
So to your point with the rigorous empathetic design, which I love that term, that's awesome. Yeah. One of the things that has been a theme in government, and especially now with Biden's executive order at the end of 2021, is customer experience. So how have you you've built this people first company, and we focus on a lot of customer satisfaction, customer design, and making sure that the customer experience is awesome. How have you been able to cultivate making that come true? And then also with some of the government mandates with the executive order and stuff like that, have you been able to bridge?
Yeah, we've kind of been part of that journey for a while. Like, I love seeing the executive orders out there, but really at the tail end of the Bush administration, we kind of started seeing these changes happen that the Obama administration really maximized and really brought outside thinking into the government. And, you saw folks from Silicon Valley come into the government, folks from, here in the National Capital Region, all over, that really helped transform. And I think, the executive order is kind of a little bit part of that journey, right? And saying, look, we've assembled, we've done rapid prototyping, we've done some amazing, deployments of what they did with healthcare.gov, what we did with USPTO.gov, what we did with FCC.gov, and really reimagining what those services to the citizens can be. I mean, the work that you all have also touched on, so many like farmers.gov. I mean, I could go on with like a rhyme of all the .govs that we've done, right? I think the executive order is really this kind of glue now that's trying to bring everything together to say, let's stay focused. Let's not lose sight of this. What I hope is that we don't look at it as just a presentation layer, right? Because in order, and you know how difficult it is, right? Is in order to have this amazing user experience, the entire stack has to be really aligned to it, right? I'm talking like from the plumbing in the cloud to the business level and the logic of how you're building that, the type of information you have. I think early on we had this like this acronym called FIRST. It was findability, indexability, readability. I'm going to screw up my spelling here. Where am I on this? Searchability and trustability, right? And it was like, hey, can you bring design that way with a first mentality? And you realize that it can't just be design on its own. The whole stack needs to be there. So I hope that, with the executive order, people don't think that it's just design is just at the presentation layer. Design is at the business logic layer. It's at the data layer. It's at the search layer. Everything there, right? I mean, I think some of the most coolest technologies we interact with that we're pretty addicted to, they do a really good job making all that stack work together.
So I'm going to ask a question I feel all of us will nerd out about. So now that as we're like this organization is very, very hyper focused on people and human-centered design. And then as we move into HCD and AI, can you tell us a little bit about our recent work with the Air Force and the machine learning platform Onyx?
Yeah. Onyx has been this R&D project for this year will be a little over 2 years that we have been working on this R&D project. And we've kind of treated it like a startup, from assembling the team to really understanding market sensing in terms of what the market that we feel where the market's going to be, kind of like, where the puck is going to be for that. But then also in terms of what really the customers need, right? And how do you bridge and balance that? And what we realized when we started kind of working on this, the use cases that were being shared with us with a specific customer, we realized that, wow, there's something really special about our passion with full open source software that's kind of been part of our journey from day one. Because when you're a startup, you can't afford everything, right? So anything free sounds good. Free chair, free software, I'll take it, right? And what we did is we basically built this platform that was aligned in terms of where some of the Air Force's mission was in terms of data rights, how they wanted to build their own type of models, allow data scientists to collaborate in one cohesive environment. And, data scientists do amazing models kind of in their own, at times in their own type of silos. So what's this data scientist doing with this other data scientist that we could help collaborate better on these models and then visualize these models, right? And I'm not talking about like these beautiful like Tableau or Power BI type of, charts. This is like data scientists saying, here's what my model looks like. And then back to the analyst and doing that whole feedback loop and chain of custody loop. And what we realize is then they start using their use cases, which, some of them are sensitive to talk about, but then they start testing out their use cases in this environment that we've kind of developed for them. But a lot of it goes back into design because it was a design first, again, rigorous, empathetic type of design of let's put ourselves in terms of what these data scientists within the Air Force need, understand that, and now start kind of building towards that.
Yeah, no, it's cool. So I've had some preview on it. I was brought in for the design aspect, but there's a lot of work in that documenting of the user flows and then even how everything is working together that I think the team has done an awesome job in understanding what that pain point was and the jobs to be done to pull in a human-centered design.
But like to your point, like user flows, right? There's no one would ever think that that's really part of design, but that is absolutely part of the design journey.
Yeah, it is. It made it really easy to do the visual design for the product because it was so well laid out. like sometimes you get things and you're like, well, why is this button here? Or like, why do you have that menu there? Like, and you're like, what's going on this? But yeah, no, there's been a lot of research and understanding from that team that is cool.
Yeah, I feel like AI is like really cool, and we just did the UiPath RPA, so that was cool. Some similar vibe of getting into that AI technology. Yeah. So it's been really cool. So I'm glad that we got to highlight that. And then to shift gears a little bit slightly, so as you may have heard or people may think, getting things done in government might move slowly.
Yeah.
So our company I feel like we're at the cutting edge of all the stuff that we do. And we're definitely kind of bridging that gap of making sure that, the nation has what they need on a faster pace. What are some technical accomplishments that you feel or that you want to highlight that MetroStar has done?
I think, yes, the government at times from the outside, you look at it, you're like, wow, it's not going as fast as some of the innovations of like how SpaceX is like rethinking space compared to NASA, right? But there's so much amazing things that happen in the government, and there's so many amazing people in the government that basically gives us this opportunity of where we are. So never losing sight of that and getting frustrated at that is a really important, I think, part of the journey to just be a little bit more patient. Then there's at times you're kind of impatient, right? And I think what we've done right at MetroStar is we've kind of at times found those impatient customers where they want to break through the glass and they don't care about cleaning up the mess right now, right? It's like, let's just break through and figure this out because this is important for the farmers. This is important for the Marine Corps. This is important for the Air Force, right? This is important for the Army. And we'll come back and we'll clean up the glass. So no one gets cut, right? So I think for us, we have this eye to kind of look for opportunities because that's what we want. We want to motivate others within MetroStar and attract others to join MetroStar because we feel that we could provide you an environment that you could actually see your work and actually seeing it being implemented, right? So that's a little bit of how we kind of approach it.
I love it. I feel like you're like nailing it today with all of these analogies that you're using. So that's awesome. And then we can't end this podcast without asking you about Zoom, a digital measurement platform, which you also happen to be the CEO of. Yeah. And from what I hear, it came about from other working with other passionate MetroStar employees. So do you want to give us a little bit of background on that?
Yeah, I mean, so it's crazy enough.
Was it in here?
It was actually in this room.
Oh, funny.
So it's kind of a little surreal from that standpoint. They were basically part of that. When I talked to you about that video game journey became of like, hey, how do we make sense of all this social noise for the government, right? And their approach was not Big Brother approach, it was a Big Mother approach. And I'm like, what does this Big Mother thing mean? And they're like, Big Mother is nurturing, it's protective. We do design by privacy by design. I'm like, privacy by design? Explain that to me. It's like, Ali, privacy by design, or the Privacy Act of 1974 is a year older than you. I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that. And we need to rethink design with privacy. And there's a lot of good things that could be done with this data, but there's a lot of bad things that could be done with this data. Kind of like we were talking earlier on about misinformation out there, right? So for them, they kind of dabbled into, coming up with different kind of solutions for a couple of different clients that was more focused on public diplomacy, foreign policy, analyzing and saying, well, in this Twitter chat, can we identify a female that is empowering women in third world countries on micro enterprise development? How do you find that?
Yeah.
Right? It's really difficult. And how do you do that with privacy by design? So they started working on these different algorithms of influencer score that was really focused on context, kind of like what Google did for making search more quality driven, that brought more users to it. They focused on an algorithm that would help them focus on who these influencers were without violating any privacy. And fast forward, their business model was like, hey, this is what you asked me earlier. What would you have told Ali back in the day? I was like, focus, focus, focus. What do we do? And the focus became sports. And at some point, you're like, okay, they're so passionate about this product. You can't keep them here at MetroStar. As MetroStar, we're rapidly going through different projects, right? We're not a product company per se. Like, we're not a platform, right?
Yeah.
But we are a platform for amazing people in design. So let's spin them out. And they separated from us, and I still support them. Kind of like, yeah, you got the CEO title, but not really, right? You got an amazing team that's running day to day. So my job is just to challenge them on a weekly basis, and kind of like I have fun with it. They're doing some amazing innovations across sports analytics, media measurement. Some of the stuff that, was probably done 120 years ago in terms of radio measurement and then broadcast measurement. And then now we think about it as like, man, like forget about linear. Now there's OTT and advanced, television, smart TVs, all that data. How do you do all that measurement and then mix it with social media? So they got a really cool company and an amazing team that, part of the legacy of MetroStar lives on with them.
That's awesome. Yeah. And then to kind of piggyback off of that with starting a company. So as we've discussed throughout this podcast, like you are ambitious. You're very focused on innovation, tech, and data. And obviously have started a very successful company. What advice would you have for people who want to start their own companies?
It's focus on that core team, right? You're a coach, right?
Yeah.
It's yes. There's going to be a couple players that you always build around, and that gift starts giving, and you start seeing the chemistry happen. I think for anyone that's starting early, assemble a pretty diverse team. Try not to make them a reflection of yourself, right? You want almost at times completely opposite. Could we curse on this podcast, or would you be people out?
Shoe, or I think I only said shoe.
Well, I'll say this.
I know, I paused too.
If there was an app that could measure the asshole of an individual, make sure they're not assholes, right?
Right, like you can be challenging but not a jerk.
Just don't be a jerk. Thank you. That was the like, yeah.
I like the asshole version.
Don't be a jerk, right? The jerk meter. Okay, that's more appropriate. So you want to assemble a really diverse team that brings something to the table that you're not all very similar. And eventually, if you have that good team, they will figure it out with you.
That's awesome. I mean, looking at our project that we work on together, our team is diverse in their backgrounds, their opinions, their personalities, and we've been being on strong for 3 years now. That we've been on the project.
Yeah. No, and it's great, right? I've been challenged on the project. I know I've challenged our other individuals. But you keep your jerk meter low when you're challenging. And it's still, right, we're still all together 3 years later.
Yeah. So before we thank you, we have one other question that we are now, as a design-focused podcast, we're asking each of our guests to answer. So what is the most promising thing you've seen in the progression of design in government?
Ooh.
Just a, not a softball to,
to end on.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't be too selfish to be like all the amazing work we do, which is true. I guess one thing that I've been really inspired, this goes back to being like sci-fi, kind of MetroStar, right? Kind of like a space geek at times, right? Reason why our rooms are all named after different stars and constellations and stuff like that. I'd say SpaceX Dragon's UI dashboard. I mean, that's if you just go back and just look at some of the different platforms, space platforms, and compare their design of their dashboards compared to SpaceX, is just night and day.
Yeah, I'm going to go do that on this podcast.
But what's amazing is it has the same and more functionality that's built, again, underneath, right? So it kind of goes back to what we were saying is like, can you design that interface, but allows that whole tech stack to be able to kind of allow you to have that interaction where now you can simplify a dashboard into 5 different screens that allows you to do everything from launch to docking to the space station, right? To coming back home, to doing various missions and exploration, to Mars. It's pretty amazing.
It's so
Sounds cool.
Yeah. Like the space stuff, I think.
Now it's quasi-government, right? It's not quite NASA, but I think it's inspiring what NASA and all the other aerospace companies have to start rethinking.
That's a great one to end on. That's awesome. First, we just want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast, supporting us to do this podcast, everyone that helps us put this together.
You're doing all the hard work, so this is awesome.
Yeah, just thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. I'm the one that should thank you. So you're doing all the hard work.
All right. Well, this is Mock It. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends, and join us next time. If you're interested in learning more about how government and tech collide, visit MetroStar.com and follow us on our socials.
Season 2.